Ready? Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us on this 14th day of March, 2023. This is the regular March meeting of the Blaine County School District number 61 Board of Trustees. Start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Trustee Perks?
Present.
Trustee Stone? Present. Trustee Turner?
Present.
Trustee Romero?
Present.
And Trustee Orr.
Present. All members of the board are present. There is a quorum, therefore I will call the meeting to order. First item is the approval of the agenda, a copy of which you've all received. Are there any amendments or questions about the agenda? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Next matter on the consent agenda is a consideration of minutes. Again, each of the trustees will have received a copy of those minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented?
No.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. The next matter is consideration of monthly financial reports, paying the bills. We've received all of that material. For a change of pace, Trustee Perks, any
I
questions
think
or
that
comments?
you asked me last time first as well, but I don't have anything.
Would you change the pace?
Thank you.
Trustee Romero,
I also have nothing.
Trustee Stone.
I have a couple questions based on the banking stuff that's been going on in the news, but I think I'm going to let Trustee Turner start out and then.
All right, Trustee Turner.
I appreciate it. Thank you for sending through the updated cash reports. When we look at these balances, account balances, it looks as though we hold our money at Mountain West Bank, we hold our money at D.L. Evans Bank, we have two accounts at the state treasury. How does the money move between these accounts?
So the state treasury pool is where like our foundation payment goes. It's where a lot of our state money goes. So from that, the reason why there are two state treasury pools is there is a pool for each of our bank accounts, for D.L. Evans Bank and for Mountain West Bank. And so I monitor the balances. I do the bank reconciliations every month before I send out the board reports to you. And as I need to transfer money out of the state treasury pool, then I transfer it into Mountain West. We have like a pretty large amount in Mountain West Bank right now because they offered us a higher percentage than what we were getting at the state treasury. So we're trying to capitalize a little bit on the interest rate there right now. So usually I'm looking at the interest rates between them to see which account is yielding the most, and then I'll make adjustments each month.
So when you allude to that's the LGIP, that's the local government investment pool of state funds, and I'm just doing a little research on the website. It's billed as a safe liquid vehicle for investing idle funds, and it's a managed fund. They're obviously somebody's selecting securities across a series of maturities and interest rates. But it also says that the LGIP is not insured or guaranteed. It's not guaranteed by the Federal Investment Deposit Insurance Corp. So it seems to me in light of what we've seen in the news lately, I think everyone is highly sensitive to how secure money is, where we carry these balances. You know, we've got a number of bank balances that are well in excess of federal insurance limits, of $250,000. And just wondering, I can see this as both something that's incredibly worrisome, but also something that seems like it presents a good opportunity. So when we think about how the district can deploy idle funds, are we under kind of the same guidelines that the state treasurer is? Where, I mean, I look at the state treasurer site that says the state treasurer can invest in bonds, T-bills, or notes of the United States government, you know, things backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, also a variety of Idaho Treasury instruments and money market funds. So we as a district, I would assume we're under those same parameters as far as what we could do with idle funds.
That's correct.
And I've noticed that the most recent rate published by the local government investment pool for the month of February was 4.65%, which is a very healthy interest rate. And so then when you talk about weighing these different interest rates at these different Mountain West and D11 and so forth, are we at all concerned about the amount of money we have uninsured at all these places?
I'm happy to do more research into that. I haven't been concerned about them because the state treasury pool is what all school districts around the state are using. And so I felt like that was pretty safe. And then at Mountain West Bank, we actually have a sweep account, which our money sweeps into. And that account has much higher security than the regular checking account. And I can get more information on that for you and you'll, yeah, I'm happy to reach out to them and get some more information on that.
And by security, are you thinking cybersecurity as opposed to bank risk?
All of it, yeah.
Yeah, I just think when we're looking at these cash balances that are substantial. I mean, we're a general fund, we're usually carrying about a $13 million balance in a general fund. You know, at 4%, that's a potential $500,000 revenue piece for the district that goes a long ways in, say, covering managed insurance costs or things like that. I'm wondering if we might, you know, through maybe our finance committee, have a discussion about a cash management strategy. I mean, when rates were nothing, there really wasn't a discussion, but now that it's a significant asset, and if we could somehow balance safety through, investing in U.S. Treasury instruments away from a bank, which we've seen, digital runs on banks in the last week, which, frightened the heck out of everyone. I just thought maybe we could open this discussion through perhaps our finance committee and look at some alternatives as far as cash management goes for the district.
I think that's a great idea. I'd love to pursue that.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's just that, we're such a heightened awareness right now of a very fragile system. And then when we think of how much taxpayer money that we're responsible for keeping track of, and it's a horrible instance. Someone came back and said, well, why didn't you protect our money better than you did? I would like to at least have the discussion and look at our different alternatives. Thank you.
You bet.
Anything else, Trustee Durham?
Oh, just a couple of account balances, but I can take it up offline at another time. I think you had a long day, Director Siemens. So
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Trustee Stone, did you have some questions?
No, I would like to see the finance committee meet and talk about that and come up with some ideas, whether it's a treasury direct account or a bond letter or treasuries or something like that. I think those are good discussions to be having right now. We've got a great resource in the finance committee. So we can take advantage of that.
All right, then if there are no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consideration of the monthly financial reports and payment of bills.
moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Next matter is a consideration of personnel exiting, entering, and alternate authorizations. HR Director Blackburn, would you like to take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do not have any alternate authorization requests this month. We do have a few items for consideration. If you recall, last year we had 8 employees request a one-year sabbatical. So we updated master agreement so that we would review all of these requests at once, just so that we had a better idea what the impact would be. So for this year, we have 4 requests for the 23-24 school year. Out of the 8 that were requested last year, we have 6 of them returning, which we're really excited about. We met with the district leadership team last Thursday just to kind of review the impact if these 4 were approved, and we don't see any reason not to support those. Another thing to highlight on this is we conducted interviews last Friday for the assistant principal position at the high school, and a recommendation was made to make an offer for Samantha Johnson. She is a math teacher there, and she accepted the position. A couple more retirements this month, a few more resignations, but nothing significant. I think we got most of those filled with our ESER paras that are displaced right now.
All right, any questions of Director Blackburn? All right, then. I will entertain a motion that we approve the report of personnel exiting, entering, and alternate authorizations.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. So we move then to the action agenda. First item being the middle school music at Hemingway. You're going to take that out?
Yeah.
Correct.
So this came to the board as information last month and is returning as a request for action. The proposal is to start an after-school music program at Hemingway for middle school students. Currently, we offer music at the elementary level and at the high school level, but there's a gap in that middle school programming. And we felt like the after-school club was economically the most efficient way to serve this need.
Is there a financial impact?
There would be a financial impact primarily with the stipend to staff the club position after school. We do have financial partners with
It just
some.
chills my blood every time I hear that. Go ahead.
I broke the bad news first. The good news is we have financial partners with Sun Valley Music Foundation on helping share the cost of equipment, which is outstanding that they were willing to do that with us.
All right, any questions? Yes, go ahead.
And we do have staff identified to fill this, or to run the program.
We have some staff who we believe would be interested in applying if we were able to post the opportunity.
Yes, go ahead, trustee Stowe.
I reached out to Principal Lydia, whose last name I'm
Flynn?
forgetting. Principal Flynn, and just asked if she had any concerns about it disrupting the PLC time that we've just set aside after school, or if it would be increased work for custodians or scheduling problems or anything like that. And she had thought through all of that already and didn't have any concerns. You know, it might be that classroom's the last one to be cleaned at the end of the day, but she didn't see have any concerns like that. So.
Other questions? All right, then, I will entertain a motion that we approve the middle school music program at Hemingway as outlined by our assistant superintendent.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Next item is the Haley Irrigation Well bid approval. The Director of Building and Ground, Sean Benny, is with us. Mr. Benny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Rourke. Good evening, Chairman and Board of Trustees. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. As you'll recall, Lane County School District is irrigating Nelson Field at Haley Elementary School off of city digestic water. at trustee Turner's request, went ahead, had some assistance pulling the numbers on what we spent annually for that irrigation water. In the fiscal year 21-22, we spent $38,000 for that irrigation water. The project was approved on the previous plant facility fund list with an estimated total of $132,000. Since then, project costs have increased. The one bid that came in at $97,777. Once the well is drilled, we will still need to install a pump, tie into the irrigation main line and run power to control the controls. Estimating right now about $60,000 for that cost. Even still, this project would have a 5-year return on investment and save the district money over the long term. We do have the clause when we acquired the water rights from the city of Haley that we need to have those installed and up and running by August 1st of this year. Otherwise, we're going to have to seek another extension from the Idaho Department of Water Resources.
And as things are planned now, we can meet that deadline.
As things are planned right now, the project is planned to begin after school's out and be completed by August 1st.
Questions of Director Benton? Yes, trustee Turner.
So, just to kind of take us back to where we were a couple of years ago, this is the water right we acquired on the McCurcher lot when we swapped the land.
Correct. If I'm not mistaken, we gave the city the Croy property and we acquired property on McCurcher. On that, it had a well that was previously drilled, was not suitable for a city well, but it was suitable for an irrigation well. We've since moved Woodard Middle School off of city domestic water and onto that well, and there are still water rights that we can then transfer to the property on Nelson Field.
So if I remember, we've got like 11.2 acre feet on that well, so we could cover both the middle school and Nelson with that allotment.
Correct. The water rate should be sufficient, yes.
And so we're already benefiting from using that well water at the middle school. So we're already getting a return on that on that swap. And now this next piece will then have that 5-year break even, and then we'll be saving. Great. Thank you for putting all these numbers together for us.
Other questions?
No.
All right, then, I will entertain a motion that we approve the bid as explained by Director Denny.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. That is approved. Thank you. Somewhat enigmatically entitled Remaining Open. Were we on the verge of closing?
Never. Yeah, Chairman Rourke, members of the board, this is required to be reviewed by the board of trustees every 6 months. You last saw it in September, and we've made no changes to it since that time. And we haven't had to close the school for illness this year. Looking for your approval now. This will be required through the full term of ESSER funding.
Which is
Which
for
is what?
next year also,
2025.
2025.
Questions? All right, if there are no questions, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the concept.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item is the engineering and design presentation and curriculum adoption. And I believe, Assistant Superintendent Johnson is going to take that up. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. So in alignment with policy 605 in our 6-year curriculum adoption, engineering and design program was one of the programs that were up for curriculum adoption this year. The district put together a team that met multiple times starting in the fall of this year to analyze our program alignment as far as standards, to assess what curriculum needs we have, and to talk about overall programming. And I think this is a chance to celebrate a really strong area of the district that not every school district in Idaho has. We have such an outstanding program and offer opportunities to students that are really unique in this area, and I think put them in a competitive advantage for emerging job markets in the state. And so I've invited the engineering and design team to be here tonight and say a couple of words about their program, and then they also put together just a short video, and then we'll talk about the supply curriculum that they'd like to adopt.
Great.
Would you like the video first or last?
Why don't we do it first? Yeah.
I do have a question.
There's sound on it.
We figured that out.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
We have a
right.
slideshow up.
Before we do that, could I have each of you introduce yourselves to the television audience?
Sure, I'm Caroline Rest and I teach at Healy.
I'm Krista Jones and I teach at Bellevue.
Scott Stone, I teach at Derek Silva's River Middle School.
Thank you.
What I appreciate about the department and the team, as you can see kind of from what's included in the board packet, they've really figured out a way to align our curriculum and our standards of what is being taught at each grade level, but maintain program autonomy. The program at Bellevue looks a little bit different than the program at Haley and a little bit different than Hemingway, but the alignment in the standards and development is strong. And it's just a great team, and I'm proud of what our district offers.
Questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, trustee Turner.
So how are the Wood River Bots doing?
Right, so the robotics is part of the engineering and design curriculum. We just had our state tournament. Middle school went to Boise State University a week ago, and high school went to ISU in Pocatello a week ago. And unfortunately, this year we got knocked out in the finals. So that was the end of the road for us this year.
Not going to Texas.
We are not going to Dallas, Texas this year. That's for the first time in, I think it's 8 or 9 years consecutive that we've been to Worlds, but this is the first year where we have a spring off.
It looks like an outstanding program. So thank you all for everything.
Trustee Stone.
I like the way you presented what things you're learning and how it aligns, and also the vertical alignment that you have, because I mean, it's true of everything that has to be taught, but I'm particularly familiar with this kind of stuff, and it was really nice to see how you've done that. How have you been able to coordinate vertically through the district with what things need to be taught when in order to teach things later on?
I think one is our curriculum is aligned that way. We follow the international standards. So it's written that way. And then also we're a very close-knit team. We talk to each other from K-12 all the time. So we're in constant communication with each other. The robotics program starts in elementary and then goes to the middle school and then to the high school. And then we're always sharing equipment, we're sharing ideas. It's a pretty close-knit team. Love our team. So we all work really, really well together and are always sharing ideas, equipment. We are all constantly writing grants, so then we'll share with each other like different parts of the year. I think that's part of it is we are just always communicating with each other constantly, even when we get new members. Like we just, Caroline's fairly new, just as of a year, and then we just were able to get Amy Nielsen and Carrie. And now we have Dylan, who's in high school, and that's the first thing we do is all get together, have lunch, talk to each other and see who needs help and kind of look.
Amy couldn't be here and she's like, hey, I've got a new unit for 5th and 6th grade. I can't wait to share. So it's like, even though she's declining the meeting, she wishes she could be here, but she's already like, yeah, let's talk. So, and thank you all for funding that extra. So she's 0.4 instead of I think 0.2. It's very rough. So it's hard to do our program justice on, 1 day a week. So for those kids in Cary and then all the way up to their high school program and stuff, that's so important to them. So thank you for that. I know she appreciates it.
Kelly would like to be here too, but for some reason, very important hockey game that she had to go to.
The time of year.
Yes.
And then I'll speak Kevin Farber, who is coming back next year. He's been on leave. That's my husband. He's Hemingway's middle school engineering teacher, and he's been with us the whole program, even though he's been off for the year. Is at home with our kiddo. So.
Great.
And Kelly, our alternate teacher, she's at a hockey.
Yeah,
So.
Go ahead, trustee Turner.
It looks fantastic. It seems so well organized. But could you share a story or two about an impact on a child? How this program has moved a child to a different place. What it's really doing with these kids.
There are so many. I see so many kids that come back. They come back in high school. They come back in college. Always asking, saying they enjoy the class and what they're doing. I saw a senior in high school last year at the last day when they do the little parade, and he came came up to me and told me that he was going to an engineering college, and it was because of what he learned in elementary school. So that was really neat. And I had another student who is going to flight school because he learned the flight simulator when he was in 5th grade.
I will say, we've had so many newcomers this year. And, you know, whether it's they're coming from another country or, you know, they're just new to our district from Texas or California or wherever, but they thrive in our program because you don't have to be able to read. You know, math is important, but it's just a fun. It's, you know, getting your hands on the robots, getting your hands on the tools and paint, and they can be successful. It doesn't matter what language it's or what their home life is like. It gives them a creative outlet, and then they can take what they learned with us and be creative at home and like find that, you know, just find that creativity outside of it. And yes, we do a lot of technology, but we do so much making and creating, and our kids are so glued to their devices and stuff. And what we try to do is give them another way to use those devices to produce things, to be, you know, audio visual production, things like that. So it's not just like, oh, I'm on here on TikTok. It's like, I can make something with this. I can use it to direct robots, or hey, there's a piece of garbage and there's some glue. I can put that together and make something.
Trustee Stone.
As a math major and computer science person, when I was in college, there weren't many women in my classes. And I just loved seeing the pictures of rockets out there and all the girls lined up working on it, seeing ladies doing this as well. And it's just nice to see that kind of exposure for all of our students.
And it's one of the things in the robotics as well is that I have to say that my top team members, when we're going in competitive robotics, were girls. And I always make that really clear to the boys that yes, they're on equal footing there. Something else I think that our tech program all the way through provides is that empowerment of kids, that they have a say in future development and what's happening in the world. We're learning about that in tech, and we try to connect everything we can to the real world, and having them realize that through their creativity or their innovation, they can have an effect on their world now and then in the future. I mean, I had a 2nd grade student work with one of our main companies that we buy tech materials from, Pittsville. She actually invented the magnets that she invented an innovation for the magnets that we all purchase now. And she worked all year long during her lunchtime, and we were able to, she just had a random idea, and through frustration, when she was working with magnetic levitation, they just paint these things white on one side, because intentionally I gave the unmarked magnets, right? That was intentional. And I said, that's a very interesting idea. Would you like to write up that idea and make a design brief? And so she did. She came in. She was really into it. So we contacted Pittsco. They got us to the R&D department. They were wonderful. And I said, I know, you know, I wrote them a letter back and forth. I know you already have these, I'm sure, but can you just kind of give her some encouragement? They're like, well, actually, we don't. And we're interested in this idea. Then we had to go through, you know, with the whole class, you know, talk about intellectual property, and we went through the whole patent process, and then she had to sign off that she didn't want any money. She just wanted to see it. You know, there's the whole process in this real world by a 2nd grader. So that was really, you know, exciting. So there's those little tiny things that can happen just randomly, and you're not necessarily planning for it, but you're encouraging it.
Any other questions?
We just do this all night.
It's
way more fun.
Way more. Our high school teacher who's not here, perfect example. He loved engineering so much, he is now our new engineering teacher, and he was a student of Kevin Lupton, who was our engineering design teacher before that, and so it's now taking that role. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Adam, the actual item here is the approval of the
Curriculum supplies, yes.
And in the executive comment or content, there's a 7-page document. Is there anything you wanted to say about, you certainly don't need to, we've got it right in front of us, but anything you wanted to point out as far as the actual curriculum and design?
No, I don't think that there's anything that would come out of the ordinary. I was just impressed with number one, the alignment of the team and sharing supplies back and forth and talking about equity and programming between sites. And then number two, just with how cutting edge our program is. You're going to see a lot of robotics, drones, 3D printers, things that are applicable to, I think, what you'll see in the workforce right now as emerging industries.
Questions about the matrix? All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the curriculum and standards.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. The motion carries and the curriculum is approved. And again, thank you all for being with us this evening. Thank you. Next item on the action agenda then is that lovable topic. Your 2023, 2024 calendar. Were you going to handle that one?
Back to me. So here for
Was that your
action.
choice or did Superintendent Foudy?
Learn to delegate.
So back for action is the calendar proposal. The only change from the previous month when it was presented as information, Wood River Middle School was previously slated to release at 1:30. In trying to align with mountain rides and create a little bit more consistency, we're requesting that that release move to 1:20, which is the same that they release every other day of the week and allows students to get down to the bus on time for mountain rides. Otherwise, the proposal is the same as what we've had in the past with same holidays, same district-wide PLC time or collaboration time. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions?
I guess I would just note that I think we have one email about it at this point, maybe two.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that was it. Yeah. And we got the survey results back from BCA that the BCA did, which was great and helpful, I think, to look at. I think there's a real, my impression is there's a real sense that we've tried the best we can to incorporate the feedback that we got. We couldn't do it 100% because we have to change some things, but I think you guys have just done some really great work in figuring out how to accommodate that and minimize the impact on parents where we can and still protect that time. So we've got district-wide collaboration time. And hearing our engineering and design staff and how they're all working across, it just gets really exciting to think about being able to do that for everything across the district. It's great.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee.
Really, it seems to me the driving force behind these changes is allowing for this PLC time. And the goal of PLC time is, is to build collective teacher efficacy. And we'd mentioned it before, and I wonder if we could follow up with, in that is our goal. Is there a way we can measure this? Is there a way we can add to our continuous improvement plan some measure of collective teacher efficacy? I know there are studies out there that show ways. And just wondered if this is, we're making a big investment in this and we're asking people to move their schedules around. It's just if we could measure how well we are moving towards the goal that we've set.
Yeah, if I may, Trustee Turner, members of the board, the research that Trustee Turner is referring to indicates that when you have it, schools can achieve, districts can achieve more than 3 years growth in 1 year's time. So I think that the metrics that we kind of laser focused on in our continuous improvement plan would be a growth model for next year.
But the actual, how teachers are feeling about their collective efficacy, is there a way to measure that? I mean, we're trying to move culturally the way people think about themselves. Is that
The way it's defined, I was at student growth.
okay?
And students are having high levels of success, teachers.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah,
superintendents.
I'd just like to circle back to that research that I had found and see if there's something that you might want to incorporate or just consider. I appreciate it.
I would expect the board would see better alignment in curriculum, better alignment in assessment as we implement this and moving forward. I think that's a good message.
Other questions, comments? All right, then, I will entertain a motion that we approve the modifications to the 2023, 2024 calendar.
So moved. Seconded. And before we vote, can I ask one more question?
Yes, by all means.
The discussion part. After we vote on this, if this is the calendar that we're moving forward with, what's the plan for coming up with the next couple of years calendar? Will we wait and see how this goes? Will we try and, I know that we're committing to this PLC time, but I'm thinking more of the holiday type commitment. Will we try and have the calendar committee meet and come up with the next 2 years kind of in line with this? Or do you think we'd wait a bit?
One plan that I was considering is kind of pushed a little later in the year than what I was anticipating. And in April, we're soliciting, I believe, committee applications again for next year. So we could put out a second year kind of draft and have it on standby. I think it's hard to go more than 2 years out. I think that you just end up amending a lot of calendars and people had a plan and then it's disrupted. And so I'd like to have one approved, one on draft and kind of develop that cadence if the board would be amenable to that.
That sounds great.
Any other discussion? All right, then, sorry. So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Me.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Did you want to say anything about the?
Yeah, it's something that I have continued to struggle with. I know that there's been so much work on this calendar, and I do know how incredibly important the PLC and the time allocation that we are, making work. And so I don't want to discount any of that, and I'm not trying to go into a huge, long debate. The one thing still so heavily on my shoulders and my heart are the students, and especially the elementary students, that I know a lot of it will only be impacted by a half hour, but I think that that's a really long time for a 6-year-old to be home alone, even longer. On top of that, we have a huge number of families right now that are displaced and will be even more displaced in a couple of weeks when they are having to move out of, and I know that this is not this year, we're talking about next year with this calendar, but those are the students that are really on my mind. Where are they going to go? And I know that we have the incredible BCRD and the Y, and we're trying to, make a space for all of these kids. But I just feel like there should be more of an opportunity for us to maybe find time for the teachers after school. I also know that the school is not a babysitter for our kids, but myself being a mom of 2 boys that did work an hour away and didn't get off till 5 o'clock at night, and my kids were home at 3. They were home by themselves. It was really incredibly hard. And I know I'm speaking about Cary now, but there were no options in Cary for anyone to take my kids, and so all of those are the reasons that I'm voting no. And again, it's not because I don't believe in the PLC or the work the calendar committee's done, but I just feel like there should be, I don't know, that we should try to move that time to after school or during school for these teachers to collaborate so we can ensure that our kids are in a safe space.
All right, thank you. The motion did carry, so the calendar is approved. Next item then is going to be budget guiding principles. And although I'm listed as the presenter, Trustee Stone has done most of the work here, and I believe in my reviewing that there has been much of a change in the guiding principle than what we had last year.
Correct. It's basically what we had last year. We got a couple comments in our meeting, and I didn't take very good notes, but I kind of remembered broadly and tried to incorporate those. So I didn't get any feedback for anyone that indicated that it was good. But yeah, it sounded like it looked fine. If anybody has additional changes, we can put them in, but I don't think it's a bad thing. It's very similar to last year. We're trying to be very steady as she goes, and these are, these are long-term goals.
Any questions, Trustee Stone, or any comments about the guiding principles? All right, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the budget guiding principles for school year 2023, 2024.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Next matter is the staff COVID vaccination policy. We took this up on the information calendar agenda last time around. So it has been placed here as an action item. And the proposal is that the current COVID staff vaccination policy, which requires that new hires show proof of vaccination, be terminated. Trustee Turner, did you have anything you want to say about that before we? Question.
I didn't have any more comments than I had our previous meeting. So
Trustee Perks.
Same, I don't have anything additional other than I'm more than happy to make a motion to ask.
All right.
I have a quick question.
Ready.
Could you reiterate for us what your recommendation is, if you have one, or what the pros and cons are, if you don't have a recommendation, or pros and cons are of each of them?
So, yeah, so my recommendation is to rescind the requirement for proof of vaccination. And also to rescind the COVID leave policy, but proof of vaccination today, COVID leave at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
And what is the impact? I know HR is down by an employee now. What impact would the changes that he's proposing have? Does that help you? Does it not change what your responsibilities are? Because tracking a lot of the COVID stuff is time consuming, I'm assuming, and you have
It
less.
is, and knock on wood, we don't have a ton of activity right now, which is good. But I think today we have 250 COVID leave days that we've had to enter in for the entire school year. Maybe 15 so far this month.
Mhm. And so the proposal that Superintendent Foudy is proposing, does that relieve some of the effort that you guys would have to do, or does it not impact
It
that?
does relieve some effort, and I think it also, we, at the beginning of the school year, when we came to the board to see if we could extend the district provided COVID leave, we did ask for the full school year, so I think we should honor that. If the board decides to.
Your recommendation?
Other questions, comments?
I guess I just have a quick comment. I know that at the last meeting, you had thought that it would sunset, but I do think that I read through this and that it says that it will take us to rescind it.
That's correct.
Yeah,
It won't sunset
it won't
automatically.
sunset automatically. We do have to rescind the policy.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? You made the motion to approve. Did we just-
To rescind.
To
Well, yeah,
approve,
but
what
to
you
approve
just
the
said.
proposal.
Oh,
is what
yes,
we're doing.
I will make the motion to
Was there a second? on that?
recommendation.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
As I've
Sure, please, go ahead, Trustee Stone.
as I've been thinking through it, it seems to me like they should be tied together at the same time, but also it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like we've committed to our current staff at the beginning of the year that we would have this to the end of the year. It doesn't feel fair to turn around and rescind that now. I thought some of the comments that trustees made in the last meeting about the kind of small proportion of people that this is impacting versus the exposure that we have in our schools was compelling, that this isn't probably a significant exposure point. And so I guess that's kind of where I'm standing right now.
Well, I don't disagree with that. And if this is superintendent's proposal, that's usually good enough for me. My concern is, for reasons that'll never be clear to me, this whole experience with COVID has brought the idea of vaccination into disrepute. And that has been mandatory vaccination, certainly for students, has been part of the fabric of public education since World War I. And what we have seen more recently, the vaccination policies, frightens me. This isn't the only pandemic we're ever going to see. In fact, we could be on the verge of another. And if you look at what the legislature is doing, and what some of the proposals are across the nation to actually prosecute people for vaccinating or soliciting others to be vaccinated, it's a dangerous concept. It's an extremely dangerous concept. And I think this is just a tiny piece. Obviously, this isn't going to send the district into some sort of a disaster. But we can go on record as saying, well, vaccination is not needed, notwithstanding the fact that once vaccination was fairly general, the pandemic certainly didn't evaporate, but it dissipated significantly. So on that basis, I'm not going to oppose the superintendent, but I'm not going to vote for it either. So all of those in favor signify by saying that.
Aye.
Those opposed? Madam Clerk, the record should reflect that the chair abstained. All right, thank you on that. Is everybody doing okay as far as time is concerned? Need a break? All right, the next item then is the Grow Your Own program. Director Blackburn, are you going to take that?
Yes, absolutely.
Please
So
do.
this was on the agenda last month as information. I did provide you with an update, but I'm going to just give you another quick one because we've had a lot of momentum in the last month. I think last month we reported 4 active and we now have 11 active Grow Your Own participants. 3 of them are enrolled in elementary bilingual education. 2 of them are in secondary programs. We have 3 special ed teachers and 3 elementary, which is great. And I hope to see more maybe through the summer. So what we're asking is for the board to consider opening this program a little bit wider to allow social workers, school psychs, SLPs, people wanting to obtain any of those endorsements, as well as CTE endorsements like robotics, family consumer science at the secondary levels, just to kind of open it broader for our other staff. And do you have any questions?
I do. You're talking about certificates for people who are already employed by the district.
So these are our classified staff members that are working to obtain a certificate to become a certified teacher.
So the Grow Your Own program would still focus on increasing the pool of teachers available to us, and wouldn't simply provide additional money for certified staff to obtain other endorsements.
So certified staff have their certified professional development bank that you're working on right now through the master agreement. And they also have $400 a month allocated to them for personal PE as well. A year, yes.
Well, I just want to make sure that the focus is still on providing additional teachers in the pool for the district, rather than, I want to make it sound too sinister, some left-handed way of increasing funds for professional development. Professional development is great, but this program was designed and has been funded for, I thought, the exclusive purpose of growing the pool of teachers we have available for us who are already here in the county and acclimated to the cost of living, cost of housing. So that's my question. Thank you. Other questions? Trustee Turner.
Remind me again how we projected the funding needs for this and where we are on that against what we were anticipating.
So for year one, we had 30 spots available and we would pay up to 5,000 in tuition for the first year. So I don't have the exact number, but 11 participants times 5,000 is pretty close to what we'll spend for this fiscal year.
We budgeted for 30, but we had 11.
So far, we have 11.
So far we
yes.
And so we'll have that same 11 next year, plus more coming into the pipeline.
In year two, we had set aside. So we have year one, 150,000 budgeted, same for year two. And then in year 3 and 4, it drops to 75,000. Was the original
I think of a
proposal.
2-year.
Yes.
I would just say it's really exemplary that somebody would take the time to do this. I mean, it's easy to put a program out there, but the commitment it takes for a full-time employee or whatever their status is to actually do the work. I mean, it's a heavy lift, and I'm glad we can help.
Other questions, comments? All right, then you have the proposal from Director Blackburn for some changes in the program, significant amendments, let us say. So I will entertain a motion that that request be approved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Approval is granted. The next item is the PLC training for Guiding Coalition. I spoke a little bit earlier with Superintendent Foudy about this. Superintendent Foudy and or Assistant Superintendent Johnson, go ahead and tell us what's involved.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Rohr. So that we have an opportunity this summer, so it wouldn't be during the school year, to provide training for any of the Guiding Coalition members that are available and interested in attending training that we all are. This would be similar to the training that some of us attended last fall. Doesn't come without a price tag. The price, so good news, bad news. Bad news, the price is approximately $50,000. That's the conference fees, the travel, the airfare, the per diem, everything.
How many people attended?
30 or 20, 24. The good news is that we have funds in ESSER, one-time funds in ESSER that we can use to cover this cost, this expenditure. With the momentum that we have and the fact that the calendar just got approved, we would strongly recommend that we send the entire team to these conferences. And it'd be from a timing perspective, we'd have to go to, I think it was 3 different locations throughout the summer. But there would be a team, a group at each of the 3 that would be significant enough for them to collaborate and share their information. And it's the same training by and large, the same presenters at each of the 3 different conferences.
Do they get paid additionally to go to the conferences? It's included. Just curious. So there's nothing on top of
There's no salary.
Got it.
They're volunteer.
it. The full 50 is covered by ESSER.
Correct.
Questions?
I would just make one comment that usually we have stuff on an information agenda and then an action agenda. And this one went straight to action, but I think there was a timing issue with your trying to, obviously if you put off planning too late, that can be a problem.
The timing issue was that the dates that worked for everybody were earlier in the summer. And now we have to get airfare booked. And so, and the conferences fill up. As we know, some of us tried to attend certain conferences, they were already booked. So to be able to book the PLC and arrange the airfare, it came out of this. Had everybody been, leaning towards August, it wouldn't be an issue.
Just a question about the PLCs in general. I know in a lot of the research we've done and looked at it, a lot of it was dated in the early 2000s. Would it be possible to provide the most state-of-the-art, the most current studies that continue to prove the efficacy of the professional learning communities? Sure. Just want to always stay on the leading edge of these things if we can. As I've done my study, a lot of them do cite research done in the early 2000s. Would love to see.
One of the benefits of some of that research is that it was originally conducted in the 90s, and then it's subsequently been reaffirmed. So it stands the test of time, but that intrigues me.
Yes, trustee Stubb.
I get the sense as I've been visiting different schools that some schools have people who have had more training than others. And Hemingway, I think, was one of the schools that had less experience, either, I don't remember if it was administration level or teacher level. And I'm just wondering if by sending this guided coalition, we're getting really good impact district-wide, even in our schools that are a little bit, haven't gotten as much training yet. Is that right?
Yeah, Trustee Stone, that's absolutely correct, because we have representatives from each of the buildings on the guiding coalition, so we're sending the whole guiding coalition.
Great.
We're raising the expertise.
And have our principals and assistant principals all had training too, or not all? Okay.
And some more than others, because the district was kind of dabbling in or
Right.
several years ago.
Yeah.
So people like Brad Ensign and Al Turris have had a lot of training.
Right. A lot of our principals are newer. Yeah. And do we have principals on the guiding coalition?
It seems to me that we've gone all in on PLC, and I'm certainly in favor of that. We're doing anything to monitor, make sure that all 8 of our buildings are on board and all of them are moving forward on a more or less equal basis.
Yeah, Chairman Roy there. So some are further along the continuum than others, but the guiding coalition has membership from each of the schools. Each of the schools also has a building leadership team. And the guiding coalition member also sits on the building leadership team. So that's the continuity between what happens in the guiding coalition and how it manifests in the buildings. And then we're looking at the guiding coalition level at building level data. So as we talked about that last time, we looked at the PEEP analysis of English language arts and mathematics, and especially with the PSAT data. And so it's the researchers describe it as a top-down, bottom-up approach. It cycles. The next step for the guiding coalition would be looking at both parent and staff feedback survey on the school climates and the influence of that. Having building level teams analyze the school level data as compared to the districts, and then we'll come together and share it out.
It seems to be from what I know and what I've observed and what I've talked to some teachers about is that the building principals are going to be the main movers and shakers here. And they have to make sure that everyone is on board. I know there are some teachers who are not necessarily hostile to the concept, but are skeptical of it based upon other changes that have been made in the similar portion of the past. And so I guess what I'm asking is not the guiding coalition as such. I mean, I've attended some of those meetings, but what you and Assistant Superintendent Johnson are doing to make sure that the teachers are getting the kind of guidance and pressure, if you will, and I don't mean that in a negative way, to get with the program here. I mean, we're making a very substantial commitment. It has ramifications that run from the calendar and those concerns to the matter of funds. $50,000 is $50,000. And I just want to make sure that everyone is on board and everyone is being pushed so that the value of the program can really be seen, obviously not in the next year, but by the time we've completed 3 years, every one of our 8 buildings will be fully engaged in the PLC concept.
Absolutely. Yeah, in the words of Dr. Mary Ann Reynolds, firm pressure relentlessly applied.
That's a more modern version of the spare the rod, spoil the child. Yes, trustee Stone.
So this proposal is to send the Guiding Coalition somewhere else to go to the conferences. At some point, it makes sense to bring the training here I would think from a physical perspective. But I just want to say that having been to a conference like that, there is such value in being surrounded by other people from other places that are implementing
Well,
this
the
and
number
have
of
success.
presenters, I mean, what we're talking about is $1 million ask.
Right. To have the breadth of
All
that.
the
Yeah.
depth of that expertise coming here.
And I want to add, we have, even this year, been bringing training to our staff that gets them on the continuum or moves them on the continuum with PLCs. Michael Maffoni, who presents for Solution Training, is a well-regarded PLC expert, has been working in our district this year. He trained all staff at the start of the year. Again, he was here previously before Superintendent Foudy and I were in the district. Rhonda Burney and her work with lesson study and all elementary math is a form of PLC collaboration that's been ongoing.
Okay, great, that's helpful.
You know, and I would add, when the Guiding Coalition met last spring, they talked about, we were at the, they talked about a vision and our best possible outcomes. And one of the best possible outcomes that they talked about was they want to be seeing our teachers present at these conferences. Imagine that. And we can get there. Absolutely.
Questions? All right then. Go ahead, trustees.
Just-
Sure.
Yeah, anytime we make decisions to do things, it's with an expected value. And I think the expected value is very clear. We've been very articulate about what we're expecting from this. And I think what you're saying it aligns with that. But again, it's it's not a hope, it's an expectation. It's going to work.
Correct.
Other comments, questions? All right, then I'll entertain the motion that we approve the training as proposed by superintendent and assistant superintendent.
So moved. Recommended.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
aye. And those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries, and that request is approved. The last item that we have on the action agenda is the emergency closure, which we had, what was it, last Thursday? And state law requires that at our first meeting, I guess, following the closure, the board has to approve.
Ratify.
So Fairweather Foudy asks again. Shut down the whole system. Flakes or stuff. Any questions?
That's a new nickname, Chip.
Gotta keep things fresh. Any questions about that?
No, I move we ratify it.
All right.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Closure is approved. We move then to the information agenda, beginning with superintendent's report. Superintendent Foudy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Rourke. And I would also invite Trustee Turner to kind of join me in this. Trustee Turner, Michelle Griffith, myself, as well as engineers and architects that work with Arch, presented to the Haley Planning and Zoning a couple weeks ago. And we also received public comment at that meeting. This is all regarding the lot adjacent to the school district office. The public comment was concerned about the proximity to the residents. as well as kind of an efficiency unit that was located on one side of the property and they wanted it on the other. And in the course of that meeting with planning and zoning, we were able to accommodate some of their requests and also able to clarify some facts. And one of the facts was that the current proposal actually has the units, I think about 11 feet further away from the house than the previous house was that had been located there up until 2019. It was then demolished. And so I believe that for the most part, people's concerns were assuaged and we received unanimous support from planning and commissioners. They were very appreciative and they commended the relationship that we've developed with Arch and thanked the community for their generous donations to the Arch Foundation for this purpose.
What we were asking for was a little added density. There was no way it was approved. I mean, the lot was approved for 3, and we were asking for 4 units. And that was up. And the commissioners were unanimous. Vicky, I just sent you an email. It's got the plan of the. We could just show it. It might be interesting for the trustees to see the kind of what they're proposing over there. It's just. Did that just come through a second ago?
You said 4 units, but isn't it 4 plus?
It's a
And-
4-plex plus
4
a
plus
studio.
plus a studio,
Yeah,
so actually 5 units.
3-bedroom units with garages,
2-story
2
garage.
stories, garage below, living area above there.
During the meeting, they had the original proposal had all 4 doors facing the homeowner to the west. And in the course of the meeting, the engineers and architects and Michelle were able to work it out where 2 of those doors are going to move, one to the south, one to the north with a covered porch. Very nice, aesthetically appealing. And then we also found a way to move the entire project 2 feet to the east away from the homeowner. So I think we made several concessions that were supportive of the homeowner. We heard the homeowner. Those changes.
That's great. And you had a bit of an audience because of something that came up after.
We did.
Right? So you ended up, yeah, wasn't interested in what you were talking about.
Yeah, it was, there is, if you can see what, this is kind of what we're looking at here. So it's, the image on the bottom left would be looking from the district office towards the building. And the image on the right, that would be looking at from the west. And there'll be, there's an easement through the district office and a parking lot. So we're going to reconfigure the parking a little bit. And, the idea with the 3-bedroom unit is, we have potential to attract a teaching family. That's, bring in two staff members in 1 unit. That would be ideal. And we've started, the process of how do you vet candidates with our Winter Haven property. And we now have our 2nd residence there. They moved in yet, Candy? Oh,
We're on to
the next one. Okay. But again, it's we're learning from this process, how we open it up, how people apply, how we prioritize the needs and so forth. So when these things do come online, and we are hoping that this would be for the fall of, they'd be ready for a staff member the fall of 2024. And again, it didn't, at the meeting, we didn't really bring up the financial model. There is a 99-year ground lease that we put together, and it does explain that there's a revenue model associated with this. And these will return revenue to the school district that we can then fund other housing programs with. And I think that's the expenses will be taken off the top. Then there'll be a ratio of what Arch gets as far as as a revenue stream that the district gets. And it'll be nice to get this up and running and see how it works again, because as we talked about our whole housing program, we did something on the emergency level, which was the rent stipends. This was kind of the intermediate plan, getting a small scale development to really kind of vet our ideas and our model, and then hopefully moving on to larger scale models once we can learn from what we have here. And so far, we've learned a great deal, and I'm really excited about moving forward with this.
Trustee So.
And the idea is not that someone comes and then works for us for 20 years and is in this unit that full time, correct? It's that it's almost more of a transition housing until they can settle doing something else so that we can help multiple people through.
Yeah, I think we had talked about kind of a 2 to 3 year lease format. We know we don't want to turn these things over every month. There's a cost to that. So we need to some stability, but we are, again, when we think about recruitment and retention, this is still, I think, we're hopefully into a recruitment tool because we have so few units available. The question came up with, what is the demand? The commissioner asking, I'm sure you've done a study as to how many units you need, and Superintendent Foudy aptly replied that we will always have more demand than we have supply of housing for our staff. So concerned about that at this time. And someplace in that 99-year continuum, it might be a different story.
Your future is not posing a risk from that standpoint.
No, I think it was well received, and the arts people have just been fantastic. The way they were so flexible with how they could accommodate the neighbors' needs. They're a great outfit to work with. It's fantastic.
Questions? All right. Anything else in your report, Superintendent? That's it. Next item is the chair report. I don't have much there. I did circulate just this afternoon a proposed contract for Superintendent Foudy, a 3-year contract. As you know, the original contract with Superintendent Foudy was for 2 years. We're proposing now a 3-year contract. That is the extent of the authority that was given by the state. So that contract cannot extend beyond the 3 years. The proposal that I have made that's contained in that draft essentially is this: Superintendent Foudy would receive a 7% salary increase for the first year of the contract. It would be the next school year, the 2023-2024 year. The 2 subsequent years would each have a 5% increase. Superintendent Foudy would also then participate in the 401k program as it's being modified. And just a word about that, because we haven't finalized that, but we've had some very productive discussions with the administrators who participate in the 401 program. And they have, I think in essence, we can say they have agreed to modify that program. So rather than being based upon percentage of salary, it will be a flat contribution. I think we're starting at $7,500, isn't that correct, Andy? For each participant, and Superintendent Foudy would participate in that as well. What I'm going to suggest is that since that came out fairly late this afternoon, go ahead and take a look at it. We'll put it on the action agenda for the next meeting, and we can discuss those specific terms more specifically. As you will recall, and the minutes reflect in our last meeting, we did vote to approve a new contract of 3 years for Superintendent Foudy. We've made that commitment, so he knows that we are very interested in having him come back for 3 years. Hopefully the weather will be good during those 3 years. So he gets a class. So we'll take that up. If there are any questions now, I'd ask you to hold on to those till everybody's had an opportunity to review the contract. All right? Very good. Then we move to the STAR benchmark analysis. Okay, were you going to take that up?
Yeah. So this is the middle school assessment indicator in reading and math that we give at the start of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. We gave this in January. The STAR system had a little bit of a glitch in reporting data, and we didn't get it until late January, and we looked at putting it on the February board agenda, but the board agenda was very long in February, so we moved it to March. But I wanted to show you progress of where our middle school students are based on STAR results. What you're going to see of note in here, I think, is that you're going to see pretty steady percentages, especially in tier 3 and the lower performance. But what I want to point out a little bit associated with that is we're moving students out. We've had an influx of newcomer students who obviously, due to language ability, will struggle to perform very well on some of these tests. And so there is student movement, but the percentages are pretty static. Hemingway in particular was talking at our last district leadership team meeting about an intervention program they're using with tier 3 students in reading, and Wood River Middle School actually was the school who brought it in. We decided to do it district-wide, and Hemingway was the one reporting back on progress, but they were just noting how well they feel like their students are progressing out of that tier 3. And so I thought that was a really good kind of side note to go with this report.
Questions of Assistant Superintendent Johnson? Yes, Trustee Turner.
Yeah, interesting that you make the notation that because the data that people are moving in and out of the data set, because, you know, as somebody looks at these numbers, you know, the change fall over winter, you're not seeing a lot of movement. You're seeing, you know, pretty much, you know, plus or minus on the reading side, plus or minus 1% across the board. So you would say that's mostly attributable to the movement of students in and out of the data set, and not, I mean, are we?
Perhaps, so part of it, yes. So I think we are moving students from tier 3 to tier 2, and then we have new students coming in replacing that data set in tier 3. But additionally, to move, as you guys know, it's not just that you're making the pace that you need to that year, you're actually recovering ground. And so with these tier 3 students, you have to grow 120% to get to tier 2, not just 100% like your class to stay on. Yeah. Or more.
So when we look at, it seems like I'm always trying to figure out what the common terminology is when we get to this. So when we look at these levels, below 10% PR, 10% 24% PR, that's what we define as tier 3.
That would be correct.
And then-
On this particular assessment, those two data sets combined make tier 3.
And so tier 2 would be the 25 to 39, and then tier 1 would be that above. Just as, you know, for fun, because I like to have fun with this kind of stuff.
It's so easy to do.
I pulled up last year's numbers, and I wanted to see how our 6th graders last year now are represented in the 7th grade. And again, the limitation is the data sets aren't constant, but I'm not seeing a lot of movement in that area, which is disconcerting. And that you know, you know, we have about the same amount of kids in tier 3 and 6th grade now in the 7th grade. So I'm just trying to think, are we moving kids, you know, how do we measure, are we moving kids from year to year through? And there was, I'm just seeing that it doesn't look like we're, I mean, there were some pockets of strength. You know, we had where the 7th grade math, the tier 3, we had 4% less kids there, and then we added some in some other areas. But do we track? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get to is we're looking at this kind of data from high above, and again, it's not. Last time we looked at the IRI, I think we disaggregated to the different school levels, and so you're obviously seeing a different data set, and you can see what are you seeing. I mean, if we could take one child and hold constant, how good a job are we doing with that one child? I mean, if you just take all the noise out of the data and say, if we have a child that's in tier 3 in first grade, what are our chances of success of moving that child?
Right. So I think early detection is your best weapon in the RTI world or in moving students. So what gets really hard, especially in secondary, when we start looking at a tier 3 student, you're talking multiple years behind that you're trying to backfill gaps. We need to do a better job as a district with that early detection. And I think our elementaries are probably a little bit ahead of our secondary schools with their RTI model. Trying to catch kids in 3rd and 4th grade who have holes and fill those holes is a lot easier than trying to catch an 8th grader operating on a 4th grade level. I think our RTI process has taken steps forward recently. It still has more steps to go district-wide. And I do think the elementary is ahead of the secondary level. And that's not saying anything poor about a school in our district. I think that's statewide. I think elementary has lived in the RTI world longer than secondary schools. I do think like the PLC time to really analyze data and putting performance matters as a part of PowerSchool in place so that we can quickly and instantly access data is going to help that as well. The middle school level is building in intervention classes that they haven't had before. You have Principal Graff talking about the win periods at the high school, which are allowing intervention even at the high school level. Those are practices that are fairly new to our district, to Idaho, probably nationwide in the secondary world.
So we're trying to set a level of realistic expectations. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of foundational work that needs to be done at the lower level so that kids aren't presenting in 8th grade at a 4th grade level. And that it sounds like your ability to move somebody that is having those kind of deficits at the higher grades is very almost, I mean, it's an incredible challenge. But so the investment that's done on the foundational level is where it'll take a while for these things to move through. Is that what our expectation should be?
Correct. And as we build a tight structure, we'll still have the tier 3 in secondary. We'll have students who move in, students from other countries, students with gaps in their educational experience who are going to show deficits in their skill level compared to their peers. But I think with our students, we're stable in our system. I think that once we're tight on our intervention practices, you should see that deteriorate.
Yes, Trustee Stone.
And so you talked about RTI, which is response to intervention.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. And that we've maybe been doing that more consistently in elementary than in secondary. I kind of have a sense of what that looks like in elementary because we've talked about it with scaffolding and things like this. What does that look like in a high school class? Can you give an example?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely challenging to figure out in the high school world. And so I think that they've been really creative and innovative with their scheduling to allow for those win periods where on Wednesday right now, currently students have the option to sign up for a class of interest or a class they feel like they need help in, and teachers can put in a request for students that they feel like they need additional time with. And so you're bound to teach your content level standards. You don't always have the time within a period to go backwards and backfill skills that were maybe missed previously, but the win period would be an example like that.
And so is the Wood River Middle School planning to add a win period similar to the high school so that they also have that? Or is
So
it
Wood
gonna
River
look
Middle
different?
School, I believe, is addressing this a little bit differently, but they've actually found ways to add intervention classes in content areas. And so a student may be double dipping, they may be taking a 7th grade English language arts class and then taking a 7th grade English language arts intervention class that's filling some of the other skills. And so they're double frequencying the time.
Got it.
Other questions? All right. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Johnson. Next matter on the information agenda is the preliminary staffing proposal. I believe Superintendent Foudy and Finance Manager Simmons will take that.
Sure. We've been working on this all year, but in earnest since I think February, working with principals and district leadership team on staffing allocations for next year. And, you know, really trying to reduce through attrition wherever possible. And so with that, I'm going to move to Val for kind of a brief summary of that.
So the process that we've followed so far is we have met with all the principals and talked about staffing in the classroom level and then expanding that out to programs and where the needs are. And so we have reduced in 3 schools at the classroom level. But then with all the newcomers coming in, we have a bigger need this year to not just be limited to those reductions, but we've got to change our resources to be able to deal with some of the other issues that have come up. So currently, what we're moving forward with and what we're planning on is that we do have a reduction of 2 certified staff in the district. We are looking already, having talks about what will happen next year. You know, there are some program changes happening that would reduce some staff in the district. But I feel like where we're going with this is we're coming to a point where we may need to start discussing how rich in programming we are as a district. And then that would be a whole different discussion on where we're going with reducing staffing. It can't just be the classrooms. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I feel like we should be able to meet those needs for next year. And again, there's a lot going on in the legislature. And so until we kind of find that and know what our revenue picture is going to look like, you know, we may need to have to go back and have more discussions on it. But right now we're at a reduction across the board of 2.
Questions? Trustee Turner.
I know when we adopted all the changes in the class and comp study last year, we took on a considerable more expense on the salaries and benefits side. And we were trying to model a pay for period to where we could get back into alignment with our revenues. And we were using a number, it was a higher number than we were able to cut here. And I think you've articulated some of the reasons why it's been difficult to get to that number. So what I think I'm hearing is that to deliver the service, the educational programs that we have currently now, we don't have a whole lot more room when it comes to reducing headcount. So to get to those numbers that we were looking at, the model of like, it's closer to about 6 positions a year for 3 years to get us back to a equilibrium after the class and comp added expense. To get to that, it sounds like the discussion about programmatic changes needs to occur sooner than later.
Yeah, and trustee Turner, members of the board, we could get there like a year from now. But before that, we would have to fast track a strategic planning process with broad-based community input. So when you're talking about, we talked about this yesterday, but there's how do you do this? You start with what I call zero-based budgeting, which is to say, you know, what exactly do we have? What do we need to operate a school with at a minimum? What are maximum class sizes, not preferred class sizes? You know, what are the basic courses that you taught to all students? And then everything else is off the table. And then you bring the community into this and have a conversation with the community involved and develop a strategic plan with a mission and vision that might be different than the current mission and vision. And then from there, then you prioritize that mission vision. And through that lens, it's easier to identify the programs that you would then add to that zero base. Up to the threshold of, balanced budget, or I love the word you used the other day, trustee Turner's stasis. Homeostasis, right? Getting to that balance.
I think when we were looking at, when we adopted the class comp study and the additional expense that it brought on, again, our modeling there was a static model. And I think it's our funding picture changes through the state legislature, through our movement through the salary schedule as far as retirements and replacements. That's another dynamic piece of the modeling when it goes to, and so 6 isn't a number that is, 6 was kind of a placeholder for if everything stayed the same. I think as we get further along and we can see some of these other pieces filling in, then I think the idea is we need to keep that goal in mind. We need to be there in a year and a half. I don't know if we, I think it's the goal we need to keep in mind. The trajectory, I think, has to be somewhat consistent, but I don't think it has to occur tomorrow kind of thing. So I think that's how we need to keep looking at this.
Trustee Turner. Excuse me, trustee Stowe.
I knew it.
I was giving him a second chance.
Always, usually. So we've talked about needing a strategic plan.
Yep.
And needing to do that process. And it's made a lot of sense to hold off on doing that as you've gotten settled in here and COVID and, just had a whole bunch of stuff like that. When are you planning to do that? Or when do you think it makes sense to do that? We talked about maybe talking about that at a board retreat.
Right.
This summer.
I think at the retreat, let's discuss it, and then in dial in a timeline. Knowing that there are phases of it, right? Like the first phase is to bring in the stakeholders, and it needs to be a cross section of diverse perspectives, not just school district people. And then that group then works on kind of identifying what information they would be interested in serving the community about, and putting together a survey, and then getting broad-based input on that survey, and then analyzing the results, and they're developing the strategic.
Were we overly optimistic last year during our negotiations with the BCEA in believing that we could reduce by 6 positions? Or has it been the case that the 214 or however many newcomers were unanticipated, has made it impossible to meet that goal?
The latter. I mean, it was a combination. I mean, I think we were coming. I mean, so 21, 22 to this year, we did reduce 5 or 6 positions. And then we saw enrollment increases, especially at certain schools, that necessitated holding on to those staff. We do still forecast some reductions over time as those smaller class sizes move up, specifically at AOE and at Millview. And then eventually they'll get to the middle school and we'll see what we do there.
Well,
I think what I would like the board to know is that our administrative staff have said, if you need us to reduce by 6, we could find the 6. But what they're looking for is guidance on what, it can't just be classroom sizes. And so what I've tried to reiterate to them this year is, tell me what your needs are. Tell me what is right. We're asking you to reduce, but you're asking for this for a reason. A lot of it is mental health related. It's not like there's a lot of that going on. And so trying to balance what the board is asking us and what the needs are that are very, very significant needs right now is where I'm kind of between that rock and a hard spot. And so but I do feel like we have the funding to maintain with a reduction of 2 this next year.
You know, in additionally, beyond staffing, we're not just looking at staffing, we're looking at all levers. And, you know, I can give you 2 examples. Last year, thanks to Adam and Paul Zimmerman, we reduced our expenditures with Chromebooks by, I think, $60,000. More than $60,000, which is an annual reduction in expenditures. And then this year, what Paul did with centralized printing has reduced, you know, will reduce
$7,000 a month.
$7,000 a month. And so you know, that's the equivalent of a certified teacher at the mid-range, mid to high. So we are, we're not limiting ourselves to a creative solution that gets to a balanced budget.
I would think we also have, you know, some revenue enhancements that we weren't anticipating. Again, you know, the our interest income is a nice offset, and I think we are still looking forward to that true up payment from the state as we get funded for our full enrollment for this year. So again, we've got, you know, we're not quite up against the way. I think it's really encouraging that we're trying to take advantage of everything that we have in front of us here and to meet the needs that you've expressed there, Director Siemens. I mean, I can't imagine the stresses that are being felt at the building level at this point, what's going on, and how we can be sensitive to meeting those needs.
And then there's 2 more while I'm on a roll there. This year we were also, thanks to the work of Jeff Brandt and then Kenny Walker, we're maximizing or increasing our Medicaid reimbursements, which we were leaving on the table for decades. And then the second thing is for next year, we are going to maximize. We're shooting for 100% utilization of our government commodities with food service, which I think this year we're 5%. 5%.
Can you explain both of those just a little bit more?
So Medicaid reimbursement, so for students with disabilities, often on their IEP, they require very specialized services. If you require support from an SLP, an occupational therapist, a nurse, a counselor, a psychologist, that time is billable down to the 15 minute. And we weren't doing it. And so we project that once we are fully billing, we're gonna recover $150,000 a year. Additionally, the government commodities, this is kind of a free allocation to school districts to a point. And it's sometimes it's ingredients like flour and sugar, sometimes it's you know, chicken nuggets or like I like, you know, Chobani yogurt because of the plant close to Twin. We have access to a government commodity that is Chobani yogurt, very high quality food. That was not an ad intended, but you know, we were leaving that on the table, and so we worked closely recently with Sodexo, and we have an insurance and a commitment from them, as well as our people within the district to maximize that benefit, which is again going to reduce the expenditures and the load on food service, which right now we're supplementing.
Trustee Stowe.
And what about, they mentioned grant writing. Do we have anybody that focuses on grant writing within the district? I know that's not ongoing money, so it's different than the kinds of things that we're talking about. It's, you know, it's another opportunity for projects.
We have.
You know, I have some real concerns about what's happened this last year with the 214 the newcomers. To a certain extent, we are in competition with other schools in this county. And when we start diluting our richer programs, I'm concerned that a lot of parents are going to make the choice. Perhaps they want their children in one of the private schools, the charter school. And of course, that directly impacts revenue for us because it's a student by student basis calculation. And I would like to send a message to the current staff that we're not looking to put them in an even more stressful situation they're in right now. We did not know, at least I didn't know, a year ago when Dan and I went into negotiations, that we were going to have 214 new students who couldn't speak English. Had we known that, the target of 6 staff reduction probably would not even have been mentioned. So I hope the staff understands that we're not rigid by any means. We got to balance the budget. You've got to live within whatever revenue we have. But I hope we're not going to have to do that by increasing the load on already overloaded certified staff or reducing the richness of our program. That's a dangerous trend as far as I'm concerned. We're going to end up with one set of schools that are public schools that are not very rich programmatically, and private schools are.
Yeah, Chairman, we couldn't agree with you more, which is why we're looking at those other options to reduce funding, reduce expenditures.
And all 3 positions that I'm asking be brought back next year are all related to the those non-English speakers. That is why we're reducing in some areas, but that's why we're asking for those 3 positions to be considered or to relieve the classrooms and provide help and support.
Apparently there is not, but has there ever been a discussion of federal funds to help a district like ours blunt the impact? These are asylum seekers. They have the right to be in the United States. No question about that. We have to educate those children. But if we are doing that in a way that dilutes the richness of our programming for other students, that's a real concern of mine. Has anyone ever mentioned that might be a good idea to direct some federal funds to districts like ours that are having to deal with it?
I haven't heard.
I wonder if Twin Falls might be a good one. I was gonna say, just with like the influx that they had.
And they're called,
Refugee center.
Yeah.
a refugee.
Yeah.
center, right? So they, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
probably
so
right.
there might be hope.
So the Title III funds that we talked about last meeting, I noticed we budgeted for about $68,000 and we received $160,000. Is that something that is where we can apply because we have more kids that are acquiring English language skills? Is that a lever that we have? Is that
That would be our Director of Special Services. She oversees the title programs. And so she's much more in the weeds on how you get those funds. And like I provide information to her, but I can certainly ask and provide that information back to you guys.
We do, so spend more in Title III than we receive. So the fact that we received more than we budgeted is fantastic because it alleviates part of the burden on the general fund. In Title III, it's specific to English language learners or multilingual learners.
to Chairman Rourke's point, I'd like to look at the equation the other way. I think we're in the business of winning some of those students that are in private schools into our schools.
Absolutely.
I think that's the way we look at it.
But my point is, you don't do that by diluting the richness of our program.
Certainly, we saw a presentation today of some very talented educators offering a very rich program, and I think it's exactly where we should go.
And our trimester schedule. I ran into somebody on the lift the other day and moved here from Seattle, and kids went in public schools, had a great entry, and the fact that it works with their ski, they're here to ski, the fact that it works with their ski schedule, seamless transition for them. Big difference from doesn't really run a semester program what kids were dealing with. Way more supportive of students in that case.
Can I just say one more thing?
Surely.
I would just really like to thank all of you for your support in, as I'm going forward with this budget and understanding why I'm not cutting more, and I think our administrators will really appreciate that. So I just want to thank you all for listening and understanding and being supportive.
Well, thank you for dealing with this problem. All right. The last item then of the information agenda, I think, is yours, is Assistant Superintendent Johnson, the social studies curriculum.
So along with engineering and design, another area that is up for curriculum adoption is social studies. This began 2 years ago. It's a 2-year process in a lot of our core curriculum areas. We had a teacher team and community members who met last year under the old curriculum committee guidelines and began the process of narrowing down curriculum to a couple of programs that we wanted to pilot at each grade level. This fall, we ran successful pilots to compare our top choices at different grade levels. The legislature changed the composition of what districts are required to assemble for a curriculum committee. So we updated our social studies curriculum committee or our district curriculum committee this fall, and we presented the recommendation from the social studies team to that group to vet. We have great dialogue, really thoughtful curriculum committee members and discussion, I felt like, and all of the resources that the initial social studies curriculum recommended, the district curriculum committee agreed with and would like to present to the board for information and then approval next month.
Excellent.
Question is, I see this seems like a very robust process. There's a heck of a lot of textbooks and curriculum on here. As a board member, how stringent should my review be of each particular curricular item?
I think that you can rest assured as a board member that we've had multiple committees, including widespread community representation on these committees, review those already. We've had teachers' involvement selecting the most effective program that they feel like delivers the content standards and yields results. We've had community committees review it and bat around if it's appropriate for our community, if there's areas of concern for our community, and engaged in that dialogue. So I think at this point as a board member, your level of involvement is as much as you choose to dive into those wonderful topics.
I read every one of those books, Dan. I've got a small book report. Yes, you may want to read it. All right, thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Johnson. That concludes our information agenda. We do have scheduled an executive session. I need a motion and then we need a roll call vote that we declare an executive session pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206, specifically 74-206-1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints and charges brought against public officer, employee, staff member, individual agent, or public school student.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Trustee Burns?
Aye.
Trustee Stone?
Aye.
Trustee Turner?
Aye.
Trustee Romero?
Aye.
And Trustee Williams?
Aye. All right, then, it is 5 minutes to 8. We will reconvene in executive session at 8 p.m.
Won the bet.
Until 9. How do I
Who's
win?
got money on it?
You got bragging rights for when we adjourned. I had 9:05.
What do I have?
Oh, you were trying to get us.
She had 9:17.
Oh, we have more to talk about.
Oh, wait, there was no Wi-Fi.
I was just going to say, Sandy, I can have it here.
As long as it's not about COVID.
All right, Madam Clerk, it is now, I guess, 9:09. We are back in session. There is no business to conduct as a follow-up to the executive session. So I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Motion is carried. We are adjourned.